The Arctic regions of Faerûn feel the frigid grasp of Auril as she looks to be constant fixtures in the minds of the people who live there. She and her clergy look to be placated, or else the lands here face the dangers of ice and snow. I am Ben Dignan, and welcome once again to Religion in the Realms. I addressed this at the conclusion of the last episode, but for the sake of not delving into spoilers for the recently released Rime of the Frost Maiden, I am foregoing any mention of anything to do with Auril from that module. What I intend on doing is looking through Rime of the Frost Maiden following this episode and putting together a bonus episode that will touch on anything this new module discusses about Auril and her faith. That way you can opt into the episode and hear potentially story-related material that would be considered spoilers. Titles. Auril goes by the following titles: Frost Maiden, Ice Dawn, the Cold Goddess, Lady Frostkiss, Mistress of Ice, Snow Mistress, and the Frost Sprite Queen. Auril goes by the following alias: Salkuruk, among the Aleutians. Portfolio and domains. Auril's portfolios are Winter and Cold. Auril's suggested domains for 5th edition are Nature and Tempest. Appearance and manifestations. When portrayed, Auril is said to have the same appearance as that of her avatars. To that end, Auril has 2 known avatars. The first is known as the Frost Maiden. This avatar is a lithe, blue-skinned terror of ice and fury. Her hair is let down and is shock white in color. She wears a white lace gown lined with frost. This gown always seems to be constantly billowing. The Frost Maiden carries a +3 ice axe that she calls the Ice Maiden's Caress, though her preference is to cast spells rather than to use this weapon. The Frost Maiden avatar has been the most frequently seen and recorded avatar of Auril down on the Prime material. The second avatar form is known as Ice Dawn. Ice Dawn is described as a haughty, silent, and impassive noble woman. She is dressed in hooked armor made of opaque blue ice. She wears an ornate crown atop her head as she seemingly glides atop the ground. As she moves about, Ice Dawn leaves a 20-foot wide rime of ice trailing in behind her. Any living thing caught in the wake of this rime has the potential to instantly die. Being within 20 feet of Ice Dawn is no less harrowing either. Each living creature has to save against freezing to death on the spot for every round they spend near her. If an individual is touching metal in any way while within 20 feet of Ice Dawn, they suffer cold damage simply through the shock of touching this chilled metal. Any liquid within 20 feet is automatically frozen, and potions themselves have a chance of being frozen if they fail the necessary save. Metal and stone can become so cold so as to shatter if attacked or dropped onto the ground. Auril has 2 known manifestations. The first manifestation is the blue-white radiance that leaves a trail of frost in behind it as it flies about. Auril's malicious laugh can be heard from this manifestation as it emits cold all around it. Her second manifestation is an emotionless face that forms out of the frost before a given audience. The hair around this face whips about the cold air this manifestation blows out from it. This manifestation is used by Auril for 3 reasons. 1. To speak with her worshippers and her clergy directly. 2. To grant an item or boon to her worshippers and or clergy. She usually does so by breathing such things out of the face's mouth. And 3. To kill one of her worshippers and or clergy. The manifestation does this by kissing the individual with their intensely cold mouth. The individual must then save against death magic. Auril can communicate her favor or disfavor through the appearance of various creatures. These include water elementals, ice elementals, various undead, winter wolves, frost giants, and other creatures who live in Arctic environments. Abilities. The Frost Maiden avatar, unsurprisingly, is incapable of accessing fire spells of any sort. though the spells she casts that deal with frost, ice, and cold deal triple damage, and creatures suffer a -3 penalty to any saves they make against these spells. Almost all the nature-based spells she has involve freezing or causing death to natural life, save the spells she has to summon arctic animals and beasts to her cause. The touch of either the Frost Maiden's body or her gown is enough to leave a permanent translucent blue scar called a frost brand. This scar deals cold damage to the individual or object. The frost brand scars not just skin, but stone and wood as well. The Ice Maiden avatar appears to cast no spells. That isn't to say she does not have access to them, just it would seem that any casting by the Ice Maiden has never been recorded. However, the Ice Maiden can turn and redirect all 6th-level spells and lower back at their casters. Any Aurelian clergy member who finds themselves in her presence freezes internally and fatally. Personal history. As I go through this episode, you will hear me make reference to Dragon Magazine issue 367. This particular issue contains a large amount of material important to Auril. In particular, this issue mentions that at the dawn of time, Auril slew a primordial being known as Durbagal. The heart of this entity was then reformed into her own personal throne room in her divine realm known as Winter's Hall. I was not able to find any mention of Durgabil elsewhere, so much like a few things from 4th edition lore, this bit of lore never seems to have been developed any further. In another throwaway line found in Dragon issue 367, it is mentioned that Auril may also in fact be the unseelie Fae's queen, the queen of air and darkness herself. The Fae creatures who reside out in her divine realm hold this to be true. This belief was later quashed by Ed Greenwood, however. Ed states in a tweet that I linked in the episode description that the Queen of Air and Darkness masquerades as Auril in order to maintain her own influence on Toril, whereas Auril allows this since it ultimately benefits her to have more importance and influence within the realms as it is. Talos has been a deity in the Forgotten Realms since the birth of Toril. Since the publication of Forgotten Realms material in 1st edition up to 4th edition, it is regularly mentioned that he has encroached heavily on Auril's influence in Faerûn. When this encroachment began to happen, I do not know. It is likely when the Gods of Fury first formed their alliance. But even the period or year of the establishment of this alliance is not even hinted at. Regardless, Auril saw the need to remind people during winter and in northerly regions that she is the dominant power there. As a result, the winters were far fiercer and far colder than they otherwise would be. Following the Spell Plague and during the 4th edition era that preceded the Second Sundering, an event called the Stormstar Queen occurred. This event revealed Talos to be just an aspect of the orc god Grumsh. From there, Talos was banished from his own plane called Fury's Heart in the World Tree cosmology. The remaining gods of Fury, being Auril, Malar, and Umberlee, formed a new group called the Three Furies. 4th edition lore being as weird and differentiated as it is, the Three Furies would come to reside in Sylvanas' dominion of the Deep Wilds. From what I can gather from what I've seen on the internet, the Stormstar Requiem event was supposed to be fleshed out far more than just a couple mentions in a couple Dragon magazine articles. However, with 4th edition being as short-lived as it was, the writers never got around to fleshing it out any further. Now, following the Second Sundering, Talos is back. Hopefully when I cover Talos in the next episode, I will unearth what exactly that means for him and those who once fell under him, like Auril. Perhaps the Gods of Fury have been reformed, perhaps the Three Furies want nothing to do with Talos. Maybe it's even touched on Rime and the Frost Maiden. Auril herself is no stranger to encroaching on the territories of other deities, however. Auril began to prey upon the demigod Ulutiu in 3rd edition era Faerûn. Ulutiu lies asleep willingly in the astral sea. In this endless slumber, he was an easy target for Auril. She began to siphon away his power in the hopes of usurping his portfolios and masquerading as him, all the while providing powers and spells to Ulutiu's faithful. After the Spell Plague, Auril also managed to siphon off some of the power of Airdrie Faenia, the elven goddess of the sky, and Grumsh. though I'm willing to speculate that any power taken at this time from Grumption Airdrie was it. Nilkara is the divine daughter of Auril in Thrym or Thrym, depending on how you want to pronounce that, the god of the frost giants. She is an attractive frost giant with blue flames for hair. Personality. In terms of her deific power level, Auril first is listed as a demi-power in 1st edition sources. From 2nd edition and into 3.x sources, she began to be listed as a lesser Faerûnian deity. This I interpreted to be a result of her siphoning of the powers from Uluthiu. I assume she still remains a lesser deity in 5th edition as well. Auril is a neutral evil goddess, though she had a brief switch to chaotic evil for 4th edition, that being because in 4th edition there was no neutral evil in 4th edition's alignment system. But this alignment was changed back to neutral evil in 5th edition. Auril is a volatile, uncaring, and narcissistic deity. One of her chief ways of toying with the people of Faerûn is unleashing terrible snowstorms and terrible cold temperatures on them. From there, she hopes individuals get stranded and lost out in her storms. Then she creates illusions to tempt her victims with visions of shelter and warmth. Personal realms. In the Great Wheel cosmological model used for 1st edition, 2nd edition, and now is the assumed model for 5th edition, Forgotten Realms, Auril resides on the first layer of the split chaotic neutral and chaotic evil outer plane of Pandemonium. Pandemonium lies in between the chaotic neutral plane of Limbo and the chaotic evil plane of the Abyss. Auril's realm, known as Winter's Hall, is found on the first layer of Pandemonium, known as Pandesmos. Pandemonium is composed of what seems to be an infinite cave system dug throughout the few layers that encompass this plane. Throughout Pandemonium, a constant gust of wind is heard. The vast majority of those who spend significant time here are driven mad from the unceasing wind. Whether the wails heard on the wind in Pandemonium are real or imagined is up to debate. The strength of this wind also varies from place to place with little rhyme or reason. Where there are sporadic refuges and settlements in Pandemonium, the wind is just a breeze, but still carries that eerie howl. In other places, it is enough to carry a person off their feet. The plane is also suffused by an unnatural darkness. Magical light might seem like a solution versus open flames fighting against the wind, but even then in some areas the darkness is enough to even absorb magical light. The first layer, Pandesmos, is the most hospitable and most populated of all the layers of Pandemonium. But truthfully, that is not saying much. The layer is still a wasteland the vast majority of the time. The tunnels and caverns here are far larger and wider than any of the other layers. The wind is calmest on this layer as well, though it is still very strong. Now we're going to get into a confusing discussion about potentially shared realms between given deities. Loki, much like other Norse deities, has 2 divine realms, one in Asgard and one elsewhere in the Outer Planes. In Pandesmos, Loki's realm is called the Winter's Hall. Auril's realm bears the same name. It is not expressly called out whether these 2 powers share this realm. On the off chance that they do, I will describe the characteristics of Loki's Winter Hall. As it is, nothing is said of Auril's Winter Hall in any 1st edition or 2nd edition sources. Winter's Hall is a realm covered in snow. It is buffeted with blizzards almost unceasingly. All sorts of wolves and wolf-like creatures hunt here, their howls always being drowned out by the strong winds. The Winter Hall itself is much like a Norse drinking hall, though frost giants drink their stolen mead while wolves and winter wolves wait under the tables for any scraps. The hall is a rough-hewn wooden structure covered in soot from the fireplaces that are ever burning. Since the Great Wheel is the assumed model for 5th edition, I am speculating Auril is on Pandemonium, though there is always the chance she has sought out a realm elsewhere. In the World Tree model used in 3rd edition Forgotten Realms, Auril resides on the plane of Fury's heart. It is a desolate place with little life and little redeeming qualities. It is a plane of destructive weather and phenomena. Fitting, given that this is where all the gods of fury live. Winter's Hall is the realm Auril resides in. This is a frigid realm covered in ice and snow. It is said to be colder than any place elsewhere in the plains. Here Auril has a palace made of morphed and shaped wind walls, the wind of which is terribly cold. Auril herself sits upon her throne made of frozen blue fire. In the World Axis model used for 4th edition Forgotten Realms, Auril came to reside in Sylvanas' domain known as the Deep Wilds, out in the Astral Sea. No buildings here have been built on this unspoiled expanse of wilderness. Auril's realm here is called the Land Under Eternal Ice, though she does still reside in Winter's Hall as her own personal palace. The realm is extensively documented in Dragon Magazine issue 367. I will describe some of the unique elements found in Auril's realm, then touch on the Winter Hall specifically. The land under eternal ice might look like most to be any prime material Arctic environment. However, this is a land with the coldest climate likely across all the dominions out in the Astral Sea. Here one can find Lornur, also known as the Ice Whale Shallows. Umberlee granted a portion of her blood seed to Auril, and within this area 2 massive icebergs made of blood float menacingly. The Hallowfrost Plains is a snow-covered tundra region where mammoths and saber-toothed tigers roam. Finally, there is the Nightfall Glacier, a region of bitter cold and treacherous voyages. This glacier is constantly shifting and reforming itself. This causes fissures and chasms to form suddenly. Winter's Hall, much like it has already been described, is made of wind and ice. It floats across the deep wilds, bringing winter and chill with it. It resembles a massive upturned iceberg, 5,000 feet in diameter at its base, and is almost just as tall at 5,000 feet. The inside is labyrinthine with many different corridors and halls. 20,000 damned spirits and servants dwell inside. On the bottom side of the hall is an area known as the Nest, where all sorts of various airships and astral jammers are docked. The promenade is the latticework network of pathways at the core of the hall that Auril's petitioners use, lit by trapped will-o-wisps. The Lyceum of Frozen Shadow is Auril's throne room. Here she holds court sitting upon her throne made of frozen blue fire. For the sake of brevity, I'm just giving an overview of both the Winter Hall and the Land Under Eternal Ice. It is well worth your time to check out Dragon Magazine issue 367 if you wish to know any more. Allies and Allegiances. As I discussed earlier, Auril is or was part of a group of evil nature deities who are called the Gods of Fury collectively. The leader and superior in the Gods of Fury was or is Talos. Talos has aided Auril, though Talos always stole away all the glory for himself in the event of a victory in the past. Their relationship was cordial enough, but Talos was unconcerned about encroaching on Auril's portfolio continuously. Now, with the re-emergence of Talos post-Second Sundering, Talos' membership and relationship within the Gods of Fury remains unstated. Auril's other peers, either in the Gods of Fury or Three Furies, are Malar and Umberlee. Auril and Malar hold nothing but disdain for one another, but they still remain part of this group. Auril and Umberlee have a civil enough relationship, civil enough for evil deities as it is. The two goddesses know that they can reliably call on one another should the need arise. Enemies. Auril's chief foes are Monitor, Suni, Shantia, Shialia, Uthgar, and the presently dead Moander. Shantia is said to always be in a constant state of conflict with Auril, understandable given both goddesses' dispositions and portfolios. Uthgar is in open conflict with Auril since she now stands as the patron deity of the Elk tribe and stole away their worship from Uthgar. Avatar and Deity stat blocks. The 2nd edition stat block for Auril's avatars can be found in the Face and Avatars supplement. Symbols. In the Faerûnian Pantheon, Auril's faith has 2 known holy symbols. The first, which is described up to until the Second Sundering, her symbol is described as a white snowflake centered on a white bordered gray diamond. Her second and most recently documented holy symbol is a 6-pointed snowflake. There's not really much difference between the two symbols, and they likely are used interchangeably in my mind. Central Dogma. From Faiths and Pantheons, a 3rd edition supplement. Quote, cover all the lands with ice. Quench fire wherever it is found. Let in the winds and the cold. Cut down windbreaks and chop holes in walls and roofs, that my breath may come in. Work darkness to hide the cursed sun, so that the chill that Auril brings may slay. Take the life of an arctic creature only in great need, but slay others at will. Make all Faerûn fear the Frost Maiden. Revere the cold goddess and sing her praises into any chill breeze or winter wind. Do not raise your hand against any other cleric of Auril. End quote. Presence of the Faith. Auril is worshipped by druids, some frost giants, people who live in Arctic regions of Faerûn, and rangers. Those who follow Auril tend to be chaotic neutral, lawful neutral, or neutral evil in alignment. Much like other evil deities, Auril is worshipped out of fear. The common folk who fear her attempt to placate both her and her faith through various means and favors. For the most part, Auril is a regional deity whose influence is felt primarily in the Arctic and regions with colder climates throughout the continent. To that end, she is almost completely unknown in the southern regions of Faerûn, where it is far warmer. Even still, the occasional Aurelian clergy member can be found roaming south now and again. Those who genuinely worship Auril are typically those whose livelihoods are dependent on winter, or those who really love winter. Regionally, the Northmen raiders of the Moonshaes hold a particular strong affinity for Auril. Among the Uthgardt tribes, the Elk tribe has abandoned their worship of beast spirits in favor of the worship of Auril. Terrors are the savage creatures who live amongst the remote slopes and passes in far eastern Faerûn. Auril is held in high regard by these creatures. Now we'll turn our attention to the 3 recorded chosen of Auril. Ireclea is presently a deceased chosen of Auril who resides with the Frost Maiden in her divine realm. Ireclea has a long history in Auril. In the 6th century Dale Reckoning, Ireclea pronounced herself to be Auril's greatest cleric. She gave herself the title of the Ice Queen as well. Between 632 and 633 Dale Reckoning, Ireclea targeted the harmonious city of Myth Ondath. You might recall me touching on Myth Ondath back in the Eldath episode. Utilizing an artifact known as the Gatekeeper's Crystal, she managed to bring down the city. But at the same time, she destroyed her own forces. Much time would pass before Ireclea emerged to do damage once more. In 1373 Dale Reckoning, alliance was made between Ireclea and the Cult of the Dragon. With the cult's aid, Ireclea conquered the Great Glacier and she marched on Sawsel. Word got out that Ireclea intended to betray the Cult of the Dragon. Coincidentally, an adventuring party arrived to do battle with the cult and Ireclea, and in a 3-way battle, Ireclea was killed. Ireclea is later mentioned in Dragon Magazine 367 to be patrolling Auril's realm in her afterlife, hunting down any spies who make their way into Auril's realm. Auril has 2 other chosen down on Toril. Artist Cimber, who can be found in Tomb of Annihilation, the 5th edition module, who is the current holder of the Ring of Winter, and Hedron Arnsfirth. Hedron attempted to conquer 10 towns in Icewind Dale in 1485 Dale Reckoning, but lost. Presently, she is a Deathlock White. Without going into spoilers, you can find her whereabouts in the Tales from the Yawning Portal 5th edition adventure book. Hierarchy and structure of the clergy. The overall organization of the Aurelian faith is loose and informal. Many of the clergy wander about northern Faerûn independently. The clergy is predominantly female in numbers. Most clergy go by the title of Hand of Auril, Ice Breath, or Embracers, depending on what edition sourcebook you refer to. These titles are attributed to them while they are out wandering and traveling the world. Though at Aurelian temples they will use formal titles representative of their rank within the clergy. These ranks in ascending order are Postulant, Voter or Votra, depending on how it is pronounced. Icewind, Storm Sister or Storm Brother, which is the most numerous title amongst the clergy. Frost Touch, Lady or Lord Cold, Lady or Lord Deep Winter, Lady or Lord Cold Circle, and High Hand of Ice. Aurelian clergy are immune to the cold, seemingly able to move about in the snow and bathe in frigid waters with no ill effects. They go about in light clothing even in the most treacherous of winter conditions. The clergy of Auril take a vow of celibacy and remain emotionally distant from people, even when in their off hours away from their duties. Responsibilities and duties of the faithful. The clergy of Auril are responsible for keeping the threat of Auril present to the folk of Faerûn fresh in their minds. This is especially true both as winter is approaching and when winter is in full force. In particular, they tell lay people to set aside a portion of their provisions to be offered up to Auril. The faith is able to generate coin for themselves in 3 ways. The first is through accepting jobs and opportunities that are located in cold, wintry climates that others would think twice about taking. This usually involves delivering messages, medicines, and other needed supplies to outposts and settlements. The second source of income comes from their ability to grant protection to others as they travel and carry out various tasks in such climates. The third way is by clearing out roads and paths during the winter and in Arctic regions. These roads are not cleared out of kindness. The Aurelian faith does it so that they can enact tolls on those who use these roads. They make no secret of this, and those who live here are well aware of what they are doing. However, the faithful's true and secret goal is to dominate every route in their respective regions. Each clergy member is to slay at least one creature with their cold magic during the winter. Often this is a creature whose hide and meat can be used by other worshippers or potential worshippers. Or this creature can be a personal enemy of the faith and or a given clergy member or members. Orders and priestly bodies. There are no formalized martial bodies in the Aurelian faith. Auril herself has let it be known that she sees no need to organize a military body to bring to bear on those who trouble her. Instead, she would rather her clergy fulfill the same objective with blizzards and other cold magics. Chillbringers are an especially devout sect of Aurelian clergy. They live out in the Arctic climates of Faerûn, serving as guides or as a source of Auril's wrath on the Prime Material. They are a reclusive bunch, only ever really choosing to associate with the Aurelian faithful. They are a cold-hearted group, only choosing to act if coin is involved, or if a reminder of Auril's power is needed. They are to remain in the lands north of Neverwinter, never to set foot outside. Should they do so, a Chillbringer will lose all their magical capabilities until they return. They are also forbidden from holding and wielding magical items or learning any spells that produce heat or fire. There are a handful of Aurelian offshoots from the main body of the faith. These include the Cult of Frost, a group dedicated to fighting the Ring of Winter, the Frost Witches, wizards dedicated to Auril who have put together tomes of magic that focus on cold magics. They are said to know where the Aurelian artifact known as the Codicil of White is found. This artifact will be discussed later in the podcast. Finally, the Sisters of Aetia are an Aetian worshipper group who see their patron deity as a servant and herald of Auril. The Aurelian faithful have been told to see that this group are corrected in their beliefs, given that their praises only help Aetia and not Auril. I cannot say with any certainty whether any of these groups are still active, especially given that their last and only mention is in a 2nd edition sourcebook, and much time has passed between the time of troubles and the Second Sundering. Appearance and dress. The formal dress of the Aurelian clergy consists of white ceremonial robes with blue trim. A silver belt is worn about the waist to cinch the robe closed. Hanging from the silver belt is an ice axe. The ice axe bears the holy symbol on its face. Typically, the ice axe is treated like a hand axe mechanically. Completing the outfit is a silver circlet worn on the head. When adventuring, the majority of the Aurelian faithful wear the circlet, silver belt, and ice axe with their normal day-to-day clothing. Unaffected by the cold, they dress to impress rather than for the weather. This allows them to travel lightly and leave needless things like heavy blankets or coats behind. Chillbringers, much like their fellows, wear white robes with blue trim. Their outfit differs in that they wear both a belt and bracers made from real ice. These icy pieces stay frozen until green grass comes around on the calendar. The Feast of the Moon marks the start of the winter, and this is when the Chillbringers form their new belts and bracers. Ice is taken from the Great Glacier and then carved by high-ranking Aurilian clergy members. These bracers are magical and provide defensive bonuses to the Chillbringer who wears them. Chillbringers wield enchanted daggers made of ice alongside the usual ice axe carried by Aurilian clergy. Rituals. Clerics and druids dedicated to Auril pray for their spells at midnight or whenever the temperature dips to its lowest during the day. Usually they do this while lying in the snow or wading into a cold stream, or in the summer months finding the coldest water available to them and submerging their heads. Wet parades are described as a ritual to Auril that takes place in the Winter Palace Temple in Luskan. Worshippers first pack their clothing with ice. From there, they have to travel to 6 white pillars called the Kisses of Auril. These pillars are not close to one another and spread out around Luskan. When they reach a given pillar, they have to say the necessary chants and prayers to Auril. They follow that up by climbing the pillar and kissing a rusted-over iron plate at the top. This is known as kissing the lady. This ritual can prove rather harmful and even fatal when it is carried out in the winter months. Thus, participants in the winter months frantically race between pillars in an attempt to complete the ritual successfully before harming themselves. The Luskan locals seem to get a kick out of this Aurilian ritual, taking bets on various aspects of the ritual. Those who manage to complete the wet parade during the winter months are thought to help shorten the winter. Thus they are treated well by many businesses and establishments throughout Luskan. The coin that the clergy take in is offered up as an offering to Auril often. They will scatter the coin about the snow during a snowstorm, or throw it through the cracks of ice of frozen lakes and rivers. As much a responsibility as it is a ritual, each clergy member is required to coerce or persuade a given person to pray to Auril during the winter. Specifically, this person needs to pray outdoors and during the night. All the while, the person has a chunk of ice, just larger than their hand, touching their bare flesh. The person must keep praying until this entire piece of ice melts. Midwinter night between the months of Hammer and Elturiak is the holiest day in the Aurilian faith. A festival is held in which ice dancing is carried out. The Coming and the Last Storm are 2 rituals that occur at different times during the year, but involve more or less the same procedure. The Coming involves clergy summoning up a bitterly cold ice storm at the start of winter. The Last Storm is much the same, but instead is held at the end of winter. Usually these storms are directed to a nearby settlement. The Embracing is the initiation ritual into the Aurilian clergy. The prospective individual is to try to last the night running through a blizzard. All the while, this individual is dressed in only boots and thin clothing. They have the symbols of Auril painted on their exposed skin as well. If they last the night, they are allowed into the faith. They are not allowed to use any magics to help them in this endeavor. Someone may attempt to initiate themselves into the Aurilian clergy at any time of the year, just that if it is warmer in southern regions, the prospective individual has to then travel up to Arctic environments to see the embrace through. The Northmen of the Moonshades have a unique ritual that they partake in to placate Auril. Offerings of food and drink are placed upon a raft or small boat during the winter. The small vessel is then launched into the swells of either the Sea of Moonshae or the Trackless Sea. If the winter has been proven to be far worse than normal, the Northmen typically supplement their original offerings with a human sacrifice or 2. Sacrificed human is usually taken from the prisoners or slaves. Auril's Blessed Tide is a holiday specific to Waterdeep. This holiday is celebrated to placate the Frost Maiden more than it is to give her praise. It is called for the first sign of frost in a given year. Griffin riders are sent out above the city blowing specific horns that let the city know that Auril's Blessed Tide has been called. From there, the people know to wear primarily white clothes and not to eat or serve hot food. Over the past 2 centuries, it has become tradition for young nobles and merchants to run from the North Ward through to the West Gate and out onto the West Beaches. From there, they jump into the Sea of Swords, either naked or wearing white tunics as a way, they feel, to also appease Auril. General locations of places of worship. I didn't really find any general descriptions of Auril's places of worship. At most, I read of how several Aurelian places of worship are secreted away in the spine of the world to keep a strong grip on those small settlements found in this northern region. Regardless, I can think of several commonalities that would likely exist in Aurelian places of worship. Blue and white featuring prominently in the material used to decorate and furnish such places. Some elements, if not the very structure itself, being made of ice, snow, or some combination of both. Pelts of various Arctic creatures are placed about. And decorative and ostentatious representations of Auril's holy symbol placed throughout the structure. Specific locations of places of worship. The Winter Palace is a temple to Auril in Luskan. This is a roofless building that contains arches and pillars carved out of white stone. The Frostspire is a slender castle made out of solid ice located in the glaciers to the northeast of Citadel Adbar. Frostspire was constructed during the 1340s Dale Reckoning to house a former high-ranking Aurelian priestess by the name of Raerel, or Red Tresses, Aeronthon. Raerel sought to have every Aurelian clergy member swear allegiance to her, and indeed many did. Still, there were those who defied her. In 1352 Dale Reckoning, she was killed by a fellow unknown Aurelian clergy member. Auril seemingly thought little of or nothing of this event. No one has since tried to claim Frostspire as their own, given the tales of Auril's bitter and powerful spirit haunting its corridors. The House of Auril's Breath in Gloucester is the largest and also most influential center of worship in the Aurelian faith. Here the congregation is made up mostly of trappers and miners who participate in the nightly fire and ice rituals. Nothing more is said of what these fire and ice rituals involve. In Gloucester, this temple has 2 nicknames, the Cold House and Cold Comfort Towers. The Towers of Fury is a temple complex dedicated to all 4 gods of fury in Calumport. Ice Dawn's house is a shrine to Auril in Nashkel. This small shrine is housed in a cabin near mountainous slopes. The clergy of Auril here offer their protection and guidance in this cold place. It is said that those who find and take more than 1 coin that the clergy scatter amongst the snow and ice to appease Auril will die the next winter from frostbite. Beneath the shop in Mirabar is a long-abandoned temple to Auril. The dwarves and humans here have done their best to clear out any Aurelian worshippers who make their way into this temple. These Aurelians seem to be searching out something of value, equipping themselves with pry bars and pickaxes. Up in the Great Glacier, there is a crevice that leads to the frozen ruins of Gariel, an ancient city from the area when the giants ruled much of Faerûn. Inside is Iraclea's likely now abandoned ice palace that she once inhabited, save perhaps for any lasting servants such as ice devils that she still might have living there. Iraclea thought herself to be the ruler of this abandoned and ruined city. The ruins are protected from the crushing and grinding movements of the Great Glacier by a sphere of force that surrounds it. An unnamed temple to Auril can be found in Byzantor. Unnamed shrines to Auril can be found in Tasseldale, ruins of Xantel Keep, Calant, Waterdeep, Iriabor, and Raven's Bluff. Character options. For 2nd edition, a given feature for Aurelian Crusaders in the Chillbringer Priest option can be found in the Warriors and Priests of the Realm supplement. The following is a breakdown of the features that I think someone deeply involved in Auril's faith, as an acolyte or otherwise, would have for a potential background to use in 5th edition. For your 2 skill proficiencies, they're survival, intimidation, or religion. For your language or tool proficiencies, I thought about it, and I know this is going to be extremely niche. It's not an option in the 5th edition Player's Handbook as it is, but I could see a Aurelian acolyte or novice or whatever the case might be having knowledge of the use of something like ice carver's tools. And then also on top of that, you could take vehicles land for dog sleds and various things like that. If Ice Carver's Tools isn't, well, it's far too niche for your character, I would just probably go with a language of your choice, either Infernal or Abyssal. For your equipment, there's the Acolytes from the Player's Handbook, the Hermits from the Player's Handbook, though taking some of that gold for a holy symbol, and then the Outlanders as well from the Player's Handbook, again removing some of that gold for a holy symbol. For your feature or ribbon feature, there is the Acolytes Shelter of the Faithful as always, the Hermit's Discovery, and Outlanders Wanderer, all three coming from the Player's Handbook. Next is a list of subclasses I would think to be thematically appropriate for a NPC or PC to take if they are a Aurelian worshipper. For the Barbarian, there's the Path of the Berserker from the Player's Handbook, Path of the Zealot, and Path of the Storm Herald from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. For the Cleric, there is the Nature and Tempest domain from the Player's Handbook. For some of those prepared Nature domain spells, you probably have to reflavor them a bit to be more kind of ice and cold centric, but it's a pretty good fit regardless. For the Druid, there's the Circle of the Land Druid, specifically one who has the Arctic region as their focus, and the Circle of the Moon Druid, both coming from the Player's Handbook. For the Fighter, there's the Battlemaster and Champion from the Player's Handbook, and the Cavalier Fighter who rides some Arctic creature, coming from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. For the Paladin, there's the Oath of Vengeance Paladin from the Player's Handbook, and Oath of Conquest Paladin from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. For the Ranger, there's the Beastmaster and Hunter from the Player's Handbook, and then the Monster Slayer and Gloomstalker from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. For the Rogue, there is the Scout from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. For the Sorcerer, there's the Divine Soul Sorcerer from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and the Storm Sorcerer both from Xanathar's Guide to Everything and the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. For the Wizard, there is the School of Evocation Wizard from the Player's Handbook, though specifically a wizard who primarily would cast cold-related spells, if not only cold-related spells. Dungeon Master Options. As I always do to start off this section, I just like to touch on monsters and NPC stat blocks that would be used to you in your games from 5th edition sources. From the Monster Manual, there is the Abominable Yeti, Wormling to Ancient White Dragon, a Direwolf, Water Elemental, Frost Giant, Ice Mephit, Killer Whale, Mammoth, Polar Bear, Remoraz, Young Remoraz, Saber-Toothed Tiger, and Winter Wolf. From Volo's Guide to Monsters, there's the Burhag and White Guard Drake. From Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, there's the Frost Salamander, Winter Eladrin, and Water Elemental Myrmidon. From Rise of Tiamat, there's the Ice Toad and Ice Troll. From Curse of Strahd, there's the Armored Saber-Toothed Tiger and Snow Maiden. From Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, there's the Alawak Abominable Yeti and Alawak Yeti, Frost Giant, Zombie, and Frost Worm. From Tales from the Yawning Portal, there's the Frost Giant Servant, Giant Ice Toad, Snow Leopard, and Young Frost Giant. Finally, from Storm King's Thunder, there is the Ice Spider and Ice Spider Queen. Next, I'd just like to touch on some monsters that are appropriate to Auril's faith who are not currently in any 5th edition sources. Tears are a Yeti-esque creature who inhabit the mountains of far eastern Faerûn. They have simian faces and have light blue and white skin and fur that allows them to blend into the snow and ice. They remain up in the mountains during the summer months, but come down off the slopes to raid and pillage when the weather turns cooler. Their description and features can be found in 3rd edition's supplement Unapproachable East. Winter hags are said to be the handmaidens of Auril. Much like other hags, they are conniving, though wise creatures and very capable spellcasters. They are fond of luring their victims into certain icy and cold hazards where they can ambush them. The 4th edition stat block for winter hags can be found in Dragon issue 367. Next are just some NPC stat blocks that a DM can make use of to represent the various Aurelian worshippers and clergy. Keep in mind, with spellcasters, you can always swap out their listed spells for other spells more fitting to the themes you're trying to get at. From the Monster Manual, there's the Acolyte, Priest, Druid, Berserker, Mage, and Tribal Warrior. And from Volo's Guide to Monsters, there's the Evoker and Archdruid. Next up is a discussion of magic items that are important and specific to the Aurelian faith. The Codicil of White is a thin, tall book bound in white ermine fur, placed over top 2 pieces of white pine. The book has a worn look given both its age and use. Within the book are 27 or 36 pages, depending on what source you go by, inked blue vellum, with a silver around their outer edges. It is thought that this book was written by Aurelian clerics to serve as a primer on their patron goddess's worship. It contains the details and descriptions of spells related to winter, cold, frost, and the like, as well as services, prayers, and rituals important in the Aurelian faith. The holder of the codicil is said to be granted cold resistance. This book is well guarded and hidden by the Aurelian faith. It has only been seen in the possession of a couple non-followers before it was retaken by Aurelian members. At a later time, it was found that the codicil had 2 new pages added to it, sewn to the spine, blue in color but lacking the silver border and written in a different hand. These 2 pages tell of how to increase the effectiveness of a spell known as Frost Fingers. The last known holder of the Codicil of White is a human female cleric of Auril known as Sephra Windriver. She is thought to have last been seen using it in 1372 Dale Reckoning in the Cold Wood. She stole away with the codicil from her fellow Aurelians. The breakdown of the Codicil of White can be found in 2nd edition's supplement, Pages from the Mages, as well as in a 3rd edition online article titled Magic Books of Faerûn, the Codicil of White, Cold Spells for Auril's Worst Wizards. I provided the link down below in the episode description to this article. Much like the books described in the Prayers from the Faithful supplement from 2nd edition, the Silver Supplicant stretches the definition of what most would consider to be a tome or text. The supplicant is described as a sculpted silver statuette of a priestess with arms raised in prayer to Auril. It stands at about a foot in height. The supplicant is cold to the touch and chills the air around it enough to the point that anyone exhaling near it can see their breath. Striking or dropping the statuette causes a distinctive ringing sound to be heard, though no spell or weapon has ever been able to break it. It gives off a certain metallic odor as well. The pages of the supplicant are built into the carved gown the priestess wears. By pulling on one of the pleats in the gown, the metal pages can be drawn out one at a time to read the spells engraved in small fine detail. The Silver Supplicant is believed to be carved in the likeness of a former priestess who brought the faith of Auril to the southern and warm Kalanshan region back in early 12th century Dale Reckoning. The supplicant would remain in the hand of the Aurelian faith in northern Faerûn until a band of adventurers claimed it. From there it was placed in the chest of a golem and likely taken by some archmage as their own. Several fake versions of the supplicant began finding their way into the markets in 1348 Dale Reckoning, with minor enchantments placed upon them to make them seem like the real supplicant. The Aurelian faith have collected many of these fakes over the years and cling on to the hope that the real supplicant may be taken from the archmage who reportedly still has it. Though a story of a disguised woman seen raising a statuette of a very similar description leaving Waterdeep has also been heard. A further breakdown in history of the Silver Supplicant can be found in the 2nd edition supplement, Prayers from the Faithful. A book known as the Revelations of the Ice Dawn is said to contain some of the most powerful prayers tied to Auril. Its very pages are blue in color and are cold to the touch, almost as if they were made of ice. It was last and only seen when a man ran into 10 towns, pursued and eventually killed by ice devils. The ice devils seemingly made off with the book to some unknown destination. As the man lay dying, he spoke of how the book was written by Auril. The spells contained within the Revelations of the Ice Dawn can be found in Dragon Magazine issue 312. The Ring of Winter could be a holy item or relic of the Aurelian faith. I certainly did not find any specific passage that says it is directly tied to Auril, though the ring is held in high regard given that some of its power was said to have been gifted from Auril's kiss a very long time ago in Faerûnian history. The details of the Ring of Winter can be found in 2nd edition's Volo's Guide to All Things Magical and 5th edition's Venture, Tomb of Annihilation. Finally, we will round out the section on Dungeon Master options by touching on some magic items that are thematically appropriate and found in official 5th edition sources that I feel the Faith Auril may have access to. From the Dungeon Master's Guide, +1 to +3 hand axes, which can serve flavorfully as ice axes, Armor of Cold Resistance, Belt of Frost Giant Strength, Boots of the Winterlands, Frost Brand, Mace of Terror, Potion of Cold Resistance, Potion of Frost Giant Strength, Ring of Cold Resistance, Staff of Frost, Wand of Fear, and White Dragon Scale Mail. From Storm King's Thunder, there's the Shard of the Ice rune. From Tales from the Young Portal, there's a White Dragon Cape. From Rise of Tiamat, there's a White Dragon Mask. From Waterdeep, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, there's the Shield of the Uven rune. From Curse of Straw, there's Jacarion's Staff of Frost. From the Hoard of the Dragon Queen, there's the Wand of Winter. Finally, from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, there's the Boots of False Tracks. Alright, thank you for listening to Religion in the Realms. If you're interested in keeping up with the release of future episodes, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and follow the podcast Twitter account at Realms Religion. These episodes are also uploaded to YouTube as well. Audio versions of the podcast can also be found on Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Play Podcasts. If you wish to get in touch with me with any questions or just want to chat, my personal Twitter is at ShivsEmbrace, or you can send an email to realmsreligion@gmail.com, all in lowercase letters. For those interested, I have posted a link in the video description to a Discord server I have set up. For audio listeners, you can find a link to the invite pinned on the podcast Twitter page. In the next episode, we will be turning our attention to potentially the current leader of the Gods of Fury, Talos, the greater god of storms and destruction. Until next time, may Tymora look kindly upon your dice rolls, Helm protect you, and Lathander light your path. Music for this episode: Malicious by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0.